That's John Garfield, my hero. And John Garfield said the best line in the world. John Garfield said, "Life is a rehearsal. Your performance is real." And when we come back, I'll tell you the story of me and John Garfield, because I played him as a boy in a picture called Humoresque. And he decided to make an actor out of me. So he told me some wonderful, wonderful stuff. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, I'll tell you about John Garfield. And that's the name of that tune. Okay. I just decided that I want to tell you the story about John Garfield. Because there's millions and millions of would-be actors and artists and painters and poets and writers, and maybe some of them will happen to find me on the internet or the inner tube or the glass tube or what the hell all that shit is. And I don't want that thing to fall over and kill you, so if you'll just land someplace and stay there, I'll be much happier about it. Yeah, you can put that down on the floor. You know, I really don't mind doing this. I kind of enjoy doing it. The only pain in the ass is that I can't do it alone. I have to have somebody here holding this $1.50 thing that most kids use to play with. But I'm using it as an entire film company and crew and sound department and all that stuff. Anyway, I was talking about the fact that there's tons of creative people. Maybe there's a 10-year-old ballet dancer who's going to class every day. And maybe there's a who wants to be an actor and he's going to 20 different classes. And in my whole life, I've never been very good at anything. I obviously was a lousy husband, and I couldn't have been a very good father or my kids wouldn't have turned out the way they did. I ain't even seen either one of the older ones in 15 years and probably won't see them when I croak. And if they don't know where I'm buried, I won't see them then. But the one thing I was always good at, because I learned from the best, you know, when you work with Charles Laughton, and you work with Humphrey Bogart, and you work with John Garfield, and you work with Bette Davis, you learn more about acting than you would in 100,000 years. And so this story that I'm going to tell you about John Garfield, I could repeat it in different ways with a lot of different actors that I worked with in my life. But I was making this movie where I played him as a boy, and it was called Humoresque. And it was the life story of a violin player. And if you can imagine that street tough guy, John Garfield, playing a violin player, and he was completely successful. You believed every second of it. He actually, and I was on the set when he was doing it, he held the violin here, and another guy had the bow over here, and another guy was underneath, and it was his arm. And the only thing that was John Garfield was the violin. There was another brilliant violinist doing the fingering and another violinist doing this, but that's not important. So I have this one scene which I rehearsed very carefully, and it was a scene about my parents and it's my birthday, and I want a violin for my birthday. And my father, played by J. Carrol Naish, he played my father a dozen times. J. Carrol Naish had more accents than he had hair on his head. So he played, when I was a Mexican kid, he was my father. When I was an East Indian kid, he was my father. When I was a West Indian kid, he was my father. So anyway, so he won't buy me the violin. And it breaks my heart. And he and my mother have this big argument because he wants to give me a baseball glove and all that stuff. So we're on the soundstage, and I have this scene. We're in the apartment, and he won't get me the violin, so I walk out on the fire escape, and I sit there, and without saying a word, I slowly start to cry. And I had rehearsed it. I knew exactly what I was going to do. And we got on the soundstage, and it was a huge, huge soundstage. And it had a massive crane. And I was up here on the 3rd floor of the fire escape. And the crane is there, and it's way back here, and the crane comes in very, 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 very slowly into a close shot of my head. Well, all the stuff that I thought I was going to be able to do, somehow this whole thing just really got me off, and I couldn't find the tears. So I started faking it. And they rolled it, and the camera came in, and the tears weren't there. So they said, cut, and they had the makeup man come in with the menthol, a little blower, and they blow it into your eyes, and a couple of minutes later, you're crying. So they shot the scene, come in, and here come the tears. And all of a sudden, from way down there, behind the camera, I hear, "This is bullshit. Forget it. Cut this off. Everybody get the hell out of here." And it was John Garfield. And I thought I was going to get fired. I really got scared. So anyway, Garfield comes around the back and climbs up the 3 floors and comes out on the balcony, and he yells to everybody down there, "Clear the stage." And he gets everybody off the soundstage. Now this soundstage was the size of a football field. It was actually 2 sound stages with a door between them, and they opened the door, so it was a massive place. Now the whole place is empty and dark, and there's just a couple of lights up here. And John Garfield is sitting next to me. And he starts talking. Doesn't say a word to me. He's just looking out there, and he starts talking about his life when he was a little boy in New York, and that his real name was Julie Garfinkel, just like my real name was Michael James Gubitosi. And he said that in those days, being a Jew was about the worst thing you could be. And that he used to get beat up all the time. And he didn't want to tell his mother, and he didn't want to tell his father that he was a coward. He said that he figured out ways to get home from school without having to walk through the Italian neighborhood, because that's one neighborhood that beat him up. And then he also had to walk through the black neighborhood, and the black neighborhood beat him up. And he didn't want to tell his parents that he was a coward. his lips start quivering. And pretty soon there were tears in his eyes. And then somehow he got me talking about me. And talking about my childhood and how my parents didn't want me. And Frank Sinatra's mother charged $15 for an abortion. They didn't have an abortion money. They'd already had 2 abortions and they had 2 kids, and it was the Depression. And I wasn't wanted by anybody. I wasn't wanted by my real father, who lived across the street. And I wasn't wanted by the pathetic, frightened, paranoid guy that my mother was married to. So while I was talking about my childhood, Garfield would ask me a question or two, what it was like when I was on the sidewalk and I was dancing, and the people threw the money, and I found my place like John Garfield found his place. He didn't belong with the people, he belonged in front of the people, entertaining them. And so did I. And while I was talking, I began to cry. And he said, you stay out here on the balcony, and I'm going to go inside the window, and I'm going to be right there for the rest of your life, Robert. Whenever you act, wherever you go, whatever you do, I'll be right behind you, and I'll be telling you that it ain't out there, it's in here. You have to find it in here, like Christopherson found it in here, like some of the greatest paintings in the world were done by prisoners in cells that had nothing but what was in their heart and in their soul. And Garfield yelled down, not too loud, to the one assistant director that he had left on the set. He said, bring the crew in, keep them quiet, and let's shoot this thing. The crew came back in. They got on that huge boom, 3 stories high, and it went way back there. And it started dollying in. And I kept thinking about my childhood and all the heartbreaks and all the sorrows and how they loved my brother and sister, and nobody gave a damn whether I lived or died. I'd have been better off if I was dead. But I found you, the audience, when I was 2.5 years old on the sidewalk. I found you and I danced for you, and I sang for you. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. She'll be wearing red pajamas when she comes. And I sang and I danced for you. And I went to MGM and came Bobby Blake. And I acted and sang and danced for you. And I went and did Baretta and sang and danced for you. And I spent my whole life. You gave me a life. I never had... Well, like I said, I wasn't much good at anything else. I could sort of fake things, but the only thing I was really good at was getting in front of you and doing what John Garfield taught me to do. And like he said, right now, John Garfield is behind me, reminding me, as I'm reminding you. Every artist out there who wants to write, dance, sing, act, whatever, it's not out there. It's in here. I don't know where to go in this life. I I know that there's got to be hope. I know that it's a sin not to have a dream. I won't tell you my dream, and I wouldn't ask you to tell me your dream. But I do have a dream. And God willing, I'll keep reaching for that dream. And you should too. Remember, reach for the stars. That's also what Garfield said. Reach for the stars. He also said the greatest line I ever heard. I think I've said it to you before. Life is a rehearsal. Your performance is real. But remember, when you reach for the stars, hang on to your ass, because you're going to need it no matter where you go. You have to have a dream, and you have to have an ass. And that's all for now.